In the early days of World War II, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese invaded the Philippine Islands. After a very fierce battle, the Americans and Filipinos were forced to surrender. This was the beginning of one of the most horrific examples of Japanese cruelty and the brutality of war. After the surrender of Bataan, thousands of American and Filipino prisoners were brought together and then marched north in what is known as the Bataan Death March. They had no food and little water. No medical treatment was available. If they were wounded and couldn't keep up, they were bayoneted to death. Some were forced to remove their shirts and hats and sit in the sun with no water. Any who asked for water were shot. Prisoners were marched to San Fernando, where they were loaded in boxcars and then sent north by rail to Capas. They packed over 100 men into the cars so tightly that when someone passed out or someone died from the heat, they couldn't fall. After arrival at Capas, they were marched 9 miles to Camp O'Donnell. Of the 80,000 POWs on the march, 26,000 died. Two survivors of the march, Alex Matthews and Phil Kuhn, had both enlisted in the Army after graduating from Haskell Institute, a boarding school for American Indians. They both ended up being stationed in the Philippines, but neither of them knew the other was there.
When we got on the radio that Pearl Harbor is under attack, well, immediately we had already been out in the field and knowing where our gun positions were going to be. So we said, take to the field. So we took her and went on out there, and we was already set up. And I guess about 11:30 is when they came over and got to the Philippines there.
But I'm trying to get to Corregidor, where my mind was. I said, Robert said, I'm going to try to get to Corregidor. But if you get to the Marvelas village, they were taking little boats, and any way you can get a little something to paddle across there. Some even try to swim, but they were shark-infested bay area to cross the bay. But I didn't realize it. But the only thing I knew that I had to take care of myself.
Most of the holding of the armed forces that concentrated down in that area, in the tip of Bataan. And so when the march started, they had to start from scratch way down there, where ours was up a little closer. And I think even there, 60 to 70 miles we had to go clear up to this. I think they call it San Fernando. And Phil Kuhn, he'll tell you the same thing. He's a Creek. He was at Haskell. I knew him and he knew me. Not intimately, we just knew each other. He graduated after I did. I graduated in 40, and I think he graduated, must have been in early 41, and he went right into the military service. Or something happened there. But anyway, we were on this march, Death March here. And we tried to get water, what we could. These spigots would be open, and sometimes be open. We'd try to get some water, and they'd beat the heck out of us. But anyway, there's one particular place there. He was in my squad. He was a Spanish boy named Juan Ramirez. I said, Juan, you watch what we've got here. Let me see if I can get some water for you. He said, okay. So I started over, and I got some water. I got our canteens with water. And I turned around, and I started back, and this little guy walked by me. And he looked like a little Filipino guy. And I said, boy, that poor Filipino's going to get the hell beat. I was thinking that. I hadn't even taken a step, and someone grabbed me right here. I turned around, he's looking, he's smiling, And I couldn't figure out who he was. He said, "Don't you know me?" I said, "No." He said, "I'm Phil Coon." I said, "Well, I'll be damned. What the hell are you doing?" He said, I was in the 31st Infantry. So we stuck together. Then the three of us were buddy. We made that march clear on got up to this Camp O'Donnell, the first concentration camp.
I looked right up at his face, but he didn't look down at me. He was looking way out there. I think he looking for somebody too. But anyway, I went by, and after I got my water and came back, it's still standing there, That's when I said a while ago, I thought I was having an illusion a while ago when I saw his face, your mind can play tricks on you when you don't have enough water in your body. You begin to get weak and see you have double vision thing. I thought that's what I was having, but it was him with that face, And I come back and I stood right in front of him and looked up, and I said, the boy hit me just right instant. I said, "Alexander Matthews." He looked down at me, and he said, "Coon," real loud. And he said, "What the hell are you doing here, I said, "Well, I could ask you the same thing." Then he asked me, "When did you come over?" I said, "I got here on October 23rd. I said, "When did you get here?" He said, "I come a month before you did. I got here a month before you did." Actual fact, what saved us, me and Alec and his buddy, of course, Juan died in camp. Juan Hernandez from San Antonio, his friend. I met him. He introduced me to him when I met him at that water hole. He said, "I got a friend here you got to meet." He said, his name's Ace Sanchez. His name was Juan Sanchez. Sanchez all the time, but here lately I found out he was Hernandez, Juan Hernandez. But he and I and Alec, we stayed together on that march. We tried to help other Americans along, but they wouldn't like that. After we seen we was helping them along, we come across a Filipino soldier limping on one foot. I got on his armpit, and Alec got on the other side and was helping him along. We took him about a good quarter mile down the road there. And the guard, seeing what we was doing, he told us, they shook their head, they didn't want us to be doing it. Because he had that fixed bayonet and he was goosing us with it, He told us, turn him loose. Sure hate to do that, He can't even walk. But that's when they started shooting. Even Americans, couldn't go no more. Just died of thirst, dehydrated. Where we was in that boxcar, from San Fernando. That's the only ride we had was on the boxcar from San Fernando to Campos Tarlac, where the Filipino Army camp was. They call it O'Donnell. And that's where many of them had passed on standing up in the boxcar. That was just something hard to take, because ain't no way you allowed to touch them, because once they're gone, I don't know what they did with them, but just told you to go on. And so I had a blister on my heel about the size of a quarter when I got to O'Donnell. Alec and I got separated there when we got off that boxcar. But off and on, Alec and I was together, off and on. And
we stayed there until they sent us on to the Cabana Tijuana. But it's always the same thing, Get up and get what you could eat. It was rice. Work detail, you'd have to go on this work detail regardless. Some of them that was able to, or say was sick, they couldn't go malaria or something of that sort, very. And that was the thing that I think, being Indian, I know my mother prepared boiled rice for breakfast cereal. So I was used to, I knew what it was. But them those white fellows, they didn't know how to take it. They couldn't eat that rice. And they finally found out it was the only thing that you were going to get. You wouldn't get no steaks. You weren't going to get no loaf of bread or anything. It's just the same thing 3 times a day. And they finally got down to where they, accepted the fact that that's what they're going to have to eat. But that was the thing that I think a lot of them just couldn't go. It was a shock to them that their way of life was cut off here. They hadn't experienced a depression or anything like that. Maybe they did, but I don't think they went through like some of what we had to experience. But when we made the march and got there, then there was a scout camp or training camp for the Filipinos was there, so that's where they set us for the first concentration bunch there. And that was the worst ones that could ever happen, because they had tried to separate the well from the sick. They had enough barracks there, so these, when they were sick, was over here. There was a little place open there. We had to stay on this side here. And then they had the burial details, what they called burial details. Those guys that had passed away might still be just laying there. It wasn't just 2 or 3, and I mean there were hundreds of them over there that were sick, and they was well, they was trying to stay well. And it's burial detail. They'd call your name out and said, "You got to go on burial detail this morning or today." And so they'd go up there and they would have a litter about long as this rug here with bamboo poles wrapped around it, and put the body in, and 2 guys had to take that body to that cemetery. And one of the burial detail I got on went over there, and he was a Chicano, he's a Spanish guy. And he was scared. He seen that dead body there. And I said, "Hurry up, let's get out of there." And the stench, could smell. I said, "Hurry up, get that, and let's go." Well, he didn't want to reach down to get it, and so I said, "I like this," and I reached down to grab that. This skin just came off in my hand there, and I just like that. I said, "Hurry up!" I said, "Damn it!" I started getting mad, so he finally got a hold, got the body, and had to took it on out of there, and all. That was a thing that I always remember. I said, "Well, you go through a lot of experience in that." You get over there to the burial where they had, they were just probably about the size of this room here, length, about maybe 12 feet wide, maybe about that deep. Dump the bodies in and cover them up. That's all it was. There was no, funeral. They said, "Well, let's have a funeral." Even the chaplain, I don't think, was allowed to go. They just then dump them and turn around and go on back. So there's a lot of them left like that over there in the burial. Some of the guys that I was with was Navajos, Eskimos. There was some of those Southwest that was there, New Mexico group that was there. One thing I noticed in this particular time and during peacetime, I couldn't figure out why, but I guess it was kind of like segregation then, because the whites were over here, the Chicanos were over here, and what few Indians was over here. These 2 got the promotions, and then there's what you say, brown nose, white guys. And I said, "Hell, I got more military experience than these guys here, but they're corporals. Some of them made sergeants over here, but they didn't look at the records. They were just that group here. But when they got in a concentration camp, everybody was equal." I think the first time that I ever experienced my own personal setback, I began to get health-wise. I don't know whether it was malaria. I don't think it was malaria. It could have been. The dysentery was bad. There's no medications for that. And I began to realize, well, I know dysentery is eventually going to get a lot of us, might even get me as it started. So I said, well, I don't want to be a bother to anybody. And so I went down in this area there, and the latrines were pretty close by, but by that there was a little small ditch with some covering over it, so I crawled in there. I said, well, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go right here. I'll just die here. That was my only time that I really, just to say I'm giving up. Well, I was in there, then this white guy come by here. And he's from New Mexico, but he said, "What are you doing in there?" I said, "I don't feel good." "Well, come on out, get on out here." He said, "Let's go back up to the barracks here and find you a place up there." Well, he saved my life, in other words. He made me get out of there. So from that time on, I said, well, okay, I'm going to make it. Well, that was one of my, only time that I recall that I just about, give it up. I said, there's no way that it's going to stop this dysentery. It's going to get worse. And then they came up with the idea, well, when they get through cooking, we'll scrape the bottom of these big vats. We can scrape that out, and that burnt rice, give it to you guys to eat. I said that should be able to slow that, and it did. I don't know how come it did, but that was one of the medicines that they made and come to mind in the prison camp. We had to improvise, and so that was part of going on from there. Then I began to get my strength back, and then when we moved on out of that place and got in a different place where it was a little bit cleaner than what we were in, things began to change. You were able to get out and start working and getting the strength back. And I said, well, you stay with it. Phil, he got a bad case of malaria, though. He was, even when we was getting ready to do detail to go down to this Lipa Batangas for that airfield, he was sick, and he said, I'm going to go with you guys. So he went up and he got clearance from the doctor to go. So he got on that detail, and he'd be all right, and he'd get that malaria attacks again, and he'd get all right. But he made it through, too, and he came back together here. And we get together when we can, visit, reminisce, talk about things. In that area, when we were in this one camp in the Philippines, way down on the southern end, they call it Lipa, Batangas province. We were there, and we were all inside the compound there. The barbed wire fence around was all inside. And they come down the road there, these guards, and they had one American pilot. They brought him in. They didn't let him talk to us. He looked over and seen us, and they took him on in there. The next morning, they took him back out again. So we knew. I said, "Oh, they're getting close." And everybody said, "But if there's an American pilot like that around, you know there's something going on." And we could tell later on if things were going good, But if they were getting beat up or something, that's when they got mean. They began to whack us, bayonets or something, anything. We knew that the war was going not in their favor, because they was. But that was the thing. That's almost like a telltale that it's not going good for them, because they're getting hostile towards us. But that continued, and then when we got to the latter part of August, I think or latter part of July, one of the two, in 44. We were working on this airfield, and we finished it. And they said, well, we're going to take the whole detail and go into Manila. So we got into Manila. And there was the same kind of work again to start on working on this airfield. And I think it must have been early part of September then they come in and bombed us. The Yanks come in up. Though we knew then, they said, then they're close now. But them Jats, they gathered us all up, and they said, we're going to take you out again. So that was another nightmare trip. When we finally got loaded, they put us down in the hold of a ship. Like this was the hold of a big ship. They set us all this. There's a guy, he'd be sitting like this, somebody. It was jammed down in there. I think it maybe could hold, we'd say maybe 800 people in there. But they would probably put 1,000 in there. It was cramped in there. The sanitation was non-existent. Whatever needed to go, they sent it down with a bucket, and that was it. Things like that. So we left the Philippines, and we started out. We got quite a ways out there, and some of them guys that was POWs was Navy guys. They said, there's a sub out there. They could tell. I said, there's a sub out there just by the sound. They said, there's a sub out there. So we knew we might get torpedoed. Maybe we'll make it, maybe not. We was out there. It got so bad that we took us clear to Hong Kong. We sat in Hong Kong Harbor there 10 days. And there was P-40s, 38s. You could barely see through that, for the whole of the ship with the ladder coming. If you got a good glimpse, then them P-38s would go flitzing by. I said, damn, we're here, but we can't do anything about it. Just sit here, And they bombed, and then a rock. Some of them that died there, they just throw them over. Finally, they cleared, and then we left Hong Kong, and we got to Formosa. I think it was November. About November, Lincoln's, the 12th, I think. I don't know what it was we got there. So we stayed in Formosa up until January or February of 45, and then we finally back on. I said, well, my life has been ups and downs with experience that has happened to me, and I'm still going. I'm thankful again. The Lord's kind of looking out for me, so that is I cherish. I said, well, I guess I wouldn't take $1 million for it, nor would I give $1 million for what I experienced. All the rest of them that are around, that's everything in a nutshell, we'll say. We got